unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with Ian Gibson, my co-host. Ian, how are you?
I'm doing good. I am very much in the spirit of the season for tomorrow.
Yeah, and I got the orange lights on. I got my ghost shirt on. I seemingly want to do this every year, either the ghost shirt or something Halloween. Maybe even in future shows do maybe costumes for sure. Well, I don't know. We'll see. Who knows? I do enjoy it because it's this is the only real holiday outside of Thanksgiving, but you don't really dress up for Thanksgiving. There's not a costume for that. The other one would be Christmas, but I don't know. I think Halloween is just more fun.
Yeah.
It is my favorite holiday as well. So I do like to celebrate as much as I can. But with that being said, let's jump into it. I just wanted to mention real quick that USF men's basketball did hire assistant coach Ben Fletcher, who had been with Coach Amir for a long time. So I'm glad to hear that. And hopefully he can continue what Coach Amir had brought to USF. And, it's a tragic thing that happened to Coach, but hopefully Coach Ben can turn the page and move the program forward. But let's jump into it. This is week 10. We are into the 10th week of the season. Crazy. This season has flown by really quick. We've had a lot of fun. But let's jump into these games. First game I got of week 10 is on Friday. It is the FAU USF game. And, I feel like USF should easily win this game, and I think they will. FAU's defensive rankings are quite pitiful, especially against the run. They're better against the pass, but I think what is happening to FAU is teams run the ball very well against them, so they don't need to pass as much, because it's one of those things where it's if you know that a team has a weakness, you're going to exploit it, and so they don't pass as much because they just run all over them. And I think that's what happens here, because they have the 96th worst defense in the country, which is terrible, and 121st rushing defense, which is the 10th worst in the country. Offensively, though, they move the ball a decent amount running, but passing, they struggle pretty severely. They only have 5 passing touchdowns. And, I don't like FAU in this game. I don't think they're that strong an opponent. I think it's on the road, so that might pose some issues. But I like that it's a Friday night game. Finally a night game. The game is on national TV. I think it's on ESPN2 or ESPN. But they'll get a lot of eyeballs on this game. I like USF in this game. I think Byron Brown is still not healthy enough to play. So, they're going to have to rely on the guy that was in there, the backup, what's his name?
Archie.
Yeah, Archie. And I know I kept thinking Izzy was coming up in my brain, but I was like, that's not his name. Archie. And Archie did well enough to win the game against
UAB,
and I think UAB is a similar opponent as FAU, kind of struggling along this year. Only has 2 wins on the year. I feel like USF is a better team in a better place than FAU, and I think USF should win this game. I'm going to go USF wins probably 31 to 20. What do you got, Ian?
I definitely know this game has been circled on the calendars for USF since the beginning of the year, because they lost the game last year memorably 56 to 14. So there's going to be a lot of, getting even. There's a lot of chatter in the offseason too between the two schools. What this one is going to come down to, it looks like Brown is on 100% still. So likely Archie is going to get the nod. Simplifying the offense is going to be key here. He did very well, threw over 200 yards against UAB. FAU's defense, like you said, is not strong. It is actually statistically better than USF's. But I would say when in this type of game, FAU or USF to attack FAU really needs to focus on the run game to open up the passing game here. The run game, they have given up on average of 200 yards a game. That is something they can easily exploit and make it easier when Archie drops back. Defense stuff, same thing as well, needs to make sure the lanes are filled when FAU is going to run. That's their primary attack on offense. And same thing, just get disruption in the backfield as soon as they can. I think defensively, how well USF secondary will do is really going to be the key here, because I feel like they can do enough to limit the 4-yard, 5-yard plus carries. But once those pass plays are in, the secondary has to step up and at least make sure there is no positive gains. I think it'll be a close one because FAU is actually, with the exception of UConn, now they did beat, I know they blew out Wagner, which was a D2 school, and their other win was Florida International. But they've actually been playing a couple teams pretty close. They famously year only lost by 6 to Michigan State. It 24-7 to Army, and they were only down 1 score to North Texas. So FAU has been in these games, but they don't have that like finer edge to win. And USF is kind of walking into a trap off of bye week if they come in sleepwalking. If USF is playing alert, they should be able to get enough points on the board. I feel like if they get 27 or more points, they'll win. I think USF gets it done. I think it's going to be a bit tricky and scary, but I'm going to go with USF winning a close one. I'm going to go with a 30-26 win for the Bulls.
Scary like Halloween?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, yeah, and I totally agree with what you were saying. And like you said, I looked at what FAU was doing as well, because it was like they had some close games. They obviously played Michigan State pretty well and held Army in check for the most part, which nobody really has all year. So I don't know. I think why I'm leaning more towards USF in this one is because I don't know. I just feel like, they struggled in those games in the beginning of the year, and it was one thing because they were playing better teams. But now they're going up against these like worse off teams, and I feel like this is USF's chance to like finally show out, because a lot of the other teams, they get like a lot of cupcakes to begin the year. I mean, USF only really had 2 of them, and then like some of the other bad teams in the conference, where like teams will play like 5 or 6 easy games to start the season. USF did not have that luxury, and so they were thrown into the fire right away. They didn't really do well, which is a shame, but here we are. So I feel like this is the start. Last week was the start as well, or 2 weeks ago, beating UAB, and now hopefully beating FAU tomorrow and continuing that until I know they play the Navy game is going to be their toughest game the rest of the year. But outside of that, they should be favored in every game that they play. Okay, let's move on to another Friday game. We have Boise State and San Diego State. I really want to see what Genty does, because he didn't have a big game against UNLV, but UNLV is a good team, and he still put up like 130 yards. So, like, his Heisman hopes are still out there. He needs to put up huge numbers the last couple of weeks. They have a really easy schedule the rest of the year. But San Diego State coming off a loss to Washington State, who's 7-1. So that's not a terrible loss. Before that, they beat Wyoming, Hawaii, lost to Central Michigan, lost to Cal, lost to Oregon State, and beat Texas A&M Community. I don't know what that COMM is. I've never heard of that team, but no. So they're like a middling team. I feel like Boise State should easily win this game. I really put it on there because I want to see what Genty does rushing wise. I want to see how much yardage he puts up because I feel like he is my only hope for Heisman because I don't really I don't mind if Hunter gets it because it actually is kind of remarkable what Hunter is doing, that he's playing both ways. I just don't want Cam Ward to get it because I feel like Cam Ward is playing like a ton of terrible teams and putting up huge yards against like no defenses at all. And, once he plays a team like Clemson, they're going to get smoked. And I feel like, they haven't played a total team yet. And, Cam Ward is getting all this hype. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like Genty, yes, hasn't played anybody, but he's like putting up numbers that have never been seen before outside of Barry Sanders 40 years ago. So that's what I'm hoping out of this game. I'm going to say Boise State wins like probably, let's say like 34 to like 17. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, and this is a night game in Boise, and usually those have been very tough places to win on the road when it's at night. Actually, the last time I remember looking it up, the last time it was last year, and I think it was against UCF was the last time they lost a game at night to any team. I didn't get enough time to do the rest of it when they lost to a Mountain West opponent at night, but they have been very good when it's that time of day at their home stadium. And I feel like this is going to be a Boise State kind of game. They're just going to run it down San Diego State's throat, just play keep away, win the time of possession battle, and just salt the game away. I just don't think San Diego State has enough to keep up unless they get out to a early start. But if Boise State can stop them in the first, second quarter, it'll be smooth sailing. I'm going to go Broncos winning 34-16.
Nice. Okay, so moving on to Saturday's games. The big game of the day, both Big Noon Kickoff and College Game Day are in Happy Valley for the Penn State-Ohio State game. And, this game is definitely like important as far as playoff hopes for both of these teams, Big Ten championship possibility, and the fact that James Franklin has struggled for many years against Ohio State and Michigan, and he now gets an opportunity to distance themselves from that. But I don't know if they will. I mean, Ohio State is a really good team. They struggled last week against Nebraska, which was kind of surprising because, there's such a huge talent disparity between Ohio State and Nebraska. But I feel like Penn State is pretty equal as far as talent-wise to Ohio State, outside of probably receivers. Jeremiah Smith and the rest of the wide receiving core for Ohio State is quite good and quite talented. And I think that, I don't know if Alar is going to start. I know that the guy that came in for him played really well. And I actually liked his playing style more than Drew Alar's because I feel like Drew Alar, I don't know, it's just kind of whatever. I think he's very overrated. Whereas, the guy that was coming in for him, Pribula, or how do you say it?
It was
it's Pribula. Pribula, yeah. I like Pribula more. It's saying 2 days ago that it was a game time decision. Doesn't look like they know as of yet. So I guess we won't know till later in the week or maybe until game time. So Maybe it'll happen. Maybe Perbula will get the start. I think that gave a jump start to the Penn State offense. He's more of an athletic quarterback and can make plays with his legs. And he also will take on defenders a little bit, where Alar is a bit of a softy and doesn't really he avoids contact. And I think that was like hyping the team up a little bit there. I think regardless, Ohio State's defense is really strong. They held Nebraska to 17 points, and they've been pretty strong in most games outside of the Oregon game. And I think that might be the difference in this game. I think Ohio State's defense is probably the strongest defense that Penn State's played all year. And I don't think Penn State will be able to score a ton of points. I think at most Penn State scores like 22. And I'm going to say Ohio State scores like 28. So I'm going 28-22. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, similarly, I think with this type of game, Ohio State definitely has the guys on their team to win these kind of games. Now, both of them defensively are very strong. So it's going to come down to like who has the better playmakers. And I think Ohio State has that. They have the better receiving core. And I feel like with either Alar or Perbula, whoever is in, they don't have enough help behind them to really get through a defense like this. Now, if you look at the Oregon game, Oregon did a great job. They had, obviously with Dylan Gabriel, but they also had, guys like Jordan James. They had their receivers with Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, or Ferguson on tight end. You don't really have that at Penn State. So Penn State's best chance is to make it a low-scoring game. If Penn State can hold Ohio State to maybe like under 23 points, Penn State's got a shot. But I feel like if it's more than that, it's Ohio State's game. And I just don't see the offense keeping up with it. I feel like Penn State might be – this is going to be the toughest besides Oregon. It's right back in the furnace for Ohio State. But they've already been in that game and only lost by 1 point. I feel like they can go into this environment and win it. I'm going to take the Buckeyes winning. I think Penn State on the stats will keep it close. But I think the Buckeyes will win. I'll go with a 30-20 win for Ohio State.
Okay, next game, Miami versus Duke in South Florida. I feel like Miami should win this game easily, but Duke's defense is sound. It's Manny Diaz's return to South Florida. He's going to want to get a win. You know that he probably... I don't know if he has an advantage at all. I mean, because most of those players are not there anymore that were there when he was there. I still like his defense because Elko was there before Diaz, and Elko ran a tight ship, and Duke was doing quite well when he left. And then Manny Diaz is pretty much taken up the mantle and done quite well. They played well against SMU. They, were a 2-point conversion away from winning. And, I think they're good enough to beat Miami, but I don't know. I think it probably comes down to Duke's offense versus Miami's defense. And what I've seen the last couple of weeks is I watched the Duke Florida State game and obviously the recap of the Duke SMU game. And, Duke can move the ball, but they struggle at times. And, Malik Murphy is a decent quarterback, but, I'm still not the biggest fan of Miami's defense, and they can be had. I don't know if Duke's offense is good enough to do it, though. That's the thing where it's but Vatek has moved the ball against Miami's defense. Cal has moved the ball on Miami's defense. So Louisville's did. I mean, there are teams that have been able to move the ball. So I feel like they can. I don't know if they will. I don't think they will. I think it's Miami's going to win this. I'm going to say Miami wins 34 to 19. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, the one thing you pointed out, while those teams were able to move the ball, each of those teams still average over 350 yards a game.
Yeah.
Duke is only averaging 336. So
Right.
that's a big discrepancy between those two teams.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the thing. I don't feel like Duke can take advantage of that because we know, the defense can be, exploited. And I feel like Duke can get a couple stops on Miami. They definitely have a good enough defense too. But it's the other thing too is like you can only keep them down for so long before they find a way to, drop 30 more points on you. And I just don't see Duke keeping up. I'm gonna go Canes winning. I'll go with let's go 35-17 win.
Okay. Next game we got is Ole Miss, Arkansas. Ole Miss still has a potential to get into the playoff, which I think if they win out, they will. But this Arkansas team is pesky. They beat Tennessee, and they've played really well all year. I'm surprised they got kind of the doors blown off in the LSU game, but I like Ole Miss in this game, though, because Ole Miss can score at a pretty good pace, and they will be able to keep Arkansas off the field, especially because they can run the ball pretty well. I like Jackson Dart to have a decent game. I think that Green for Arkansas will probably have a solid game because I'm not the biggest fan of Ole Miss's defense, but I feel like Ole Miss, like I said, will be able to run the ball effectively enough to keep Arkansas off the field. So I'm going to say Ole Miss wins probably in a 28-20 game. What do you got, Ian?
So with the exception of Texas, these teams, actually, I don't think so anymore. So right now, offensively, per yards per game, Ole Miss is number 1 and Arkansas is number 2 right now in the SECs. Yeah. So when it's going to come down to his defense, and while Ole Miss's defense is not impressive, Arkansas has actually given up more yards per game. They've almost given up over 400 yards a game. Wow. And I feel like that is a recipe for disaster in this game. Now, Ole Miss and Arkansas have always had these great shootout games, and I don't think this one will be any different. But when it comes down to it, if it comes down to a goal line stand, I don't feel comfortable with Arkansas getting the stop as I would Ole Miss. I feel like Ole Miss would come in there. The only chance Arkansas has got would be to make it a shootout, and if they can get the ball last. But I just don't see them getting enough stops against Ole Miss. So I'm going to go Rebels with this one. I'll go in a shootout. I'll go 45-38.
Okay, yeah, that's a high scoring game.
Yeah.
I want to let you do this Army Air Force game, and then I'll give my thoughts because you are more in tune with what Air Force does. But I want to hear your thoughts, Ian.
Yeah, so Army Air Force, one half of the Commander in Chief Trophy. I'm pretty sure they still do that, right?
Yeah, they still do it. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm going to say yes, they do. For Air Force, I mean, it has been really a struggle this year. They've got one win, and it's against Merrimack, and that was at the beginning of the year, and that was, I think, 21-6. Their whole philosophy and their whole thing is to keep within games, keep it below 20 points, and then have the, offense be able to score enough and play keep away. Kind of similar to what we've expected from, the Army, Navy, from the academy schools. With that, though, the problem is that the offense has really struggled. They have only scored more in double digits, I think, 3 times this year. Or 4 times this year, and we're in week 10, and it just hasn't been a good look. And the defenses have not done a good job against Mountain West opponents. They gave up 52 to New Mexico, and then the other half of this little trifecta against Navy, they gave up 34. It's not a good look, and we know with Army, they're much more efficient in this type of offense, and they have the defense to back it up right now. I feel like with this one, with how good the rush defense has been for Army this year, they'll find a way to stop Air Force, with any chance they got, because that's just their, how Air Force's game plan is. They kind of know each other, so it's been, I feel like they'll do enough to get the stops needed. I just don't see Air Force. I know they scored 37 against New Mexico, but I just don't see them getting more than like 20 points on a team like Army. I think it'll be like kind of the typical type of these games, but I'm going to go with the Black Knights here. I'm going to go 28-13 Army.
Well, I was just looking at Army's point totals for the year. They have only scored under 37 points once the entire year, and that was against FAU. I feel like they're going to score a lot. I think because their offense is so potent on the ground, almost nobody can stop it. Like every team they've played, nobody's even come close to stopping them. They're very like machine-like with their option play, because the running backs and fullbacks know where to go, know what blocks to pick up. They're the quarterback, God, what's his name? I can't remember his name. For Army.
That's
Daly.
Bryson Daly.
Daly, yeah. So Daly, man, the kid is just a stud back there, and he is a maestro with the ball, and he's super effective because he can run the ball as well, and he's willing to take on hits. So it makes it even that much more dangerous, because he'll take on the hit to get the late option. And like they're honestly like how I used to like love to play the NCAA football game back in the day with the option is how I loved this offense. And it's like, it's not as much pass orientated, but it's definitely like very run orientated. And, but again, their defense is strong too. And that's the other thing. It's like, it's not just that Army is scoring a ton of points. They're really throttling everyone else. I mean, they held Tulsa to 7, UAB to 10. Eastern Carolina got 28 only because like they were up so big that it was like late in the game. They held Rice to 14, Temple to 14, Florida Atlantic to 7, Lehigh to 7. So literally outside of the Eastern Carolina game, they've held opponents to 14 and under the entire time. So like, I don't think that Air Force is going to score a lot here. And I feel like Army's going to score at least 40. So I'm going to go with Army 40 to, let's say 17. And it'd be lucky if they get 17. Okay, moving on to Oregon, Michigan. At the beginning of the year, you would have thought this would be a really big game, but Michigan's really fallen off the last little bit and could have been even worse because they should have lost to USC. But they've got 3 losses so far. Oregon coming into this game, a huge favorite, and it's a home game, and I feel like Oregon should win this game easily. Dylan Gabriel's got this offense humming. Evan Stewart is a stud. The run game is effective. The defense is very good. I mean, I think that's something probably that is not talked a lot, is how good Oregon's defense is compared to years past. And obviously Dan Lanning is a defensive coordinator in his previous stints. So, and with Georgia, and so he knows how to coach defense. But it's not only that, they have playmakers all over the field. Like I said, it's a home game. I don't think Oregon should be challenging this. The next couple of weeks for Oregon, they've got Maryland. They've got, I believe, Oregon State as well at the end.
They played Oregon State. Yeah,
they already played them. Sorry, yeah. They used to play that the last game of the year. Now they're playing Washington last game of the year. But they've got Maryland, Wisconsin, and Washington. So I feel like this is probably their toughest game. I feel like they should be Washington, and they should beat Maryland, and they should beat Wisconsin. So this is probably their toughest game left. And even if they lose a game, they still more than likely will get in to the Big Ten championship game and get into the playoffs. So I think they're almost a lock for the playoff at this point. I don't think Michigan, with their quarterback issues, I don't think they're good enough to beat this team. Their defense is sound, but their offense, outside of the Donovan Mitchell, like they don't have really a ton of like playmakers. And, they can run the ball, but if you can't throw the ball, they just stack the box against you. And then you just have to hope and pray that you hit one down the field at some point, but it just hasn't been happening for them. And I know they beat Michigan State last week, but Michigan State is not very good. So for Michigan, this is another loss. So I'm going to say Oregon wins probably 38-16. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, additionally, Oregon has scored 30 points every game except the 24-17 opener against Idaho. They've at least scored 30 points in every game. And not only that, in the Big Ten, the number one defense is Ohio State, and Oregon was able to get 30 on them. And that, again, it's one of those things where you just don't expect – I don't expect Michigan to get more than 30 in this type of game. I think Oregon would get enough stops to prevent that. Yeah, and I think the Ducks will win this one. It is definitely a trap game because it's in the Big House, and we know that crowd is loud. But I don't see Oregon.
Oh, I thought this was a home game.
No, it's in Ann Arbor.
I apologize. I've been sick the last couple of days, so my brain has not been operating correctly. So
okay.
I apologize for that. Sorry.
No, you're good. But even then, in the Big House, I don't think Oregon will get phased. I'm going to go with the Ducks winning. I'll go with a 38-19 win.
Okay, nice. Okay, so the next game we have, we're going to talk about it. Here it comes. Florida, Georgia. Okay, so it's been like a bit of a narrative shift since I would say 4 weeks ago. The narrative about this game was like, oh, Georgia is just going to demolish Florida and it's going to be an easy victory for Georgia and they're going to waltz through this one. Fast forward the last couple of weeks as we're going through, Florida challenged Tennessee, should have beat them, had them on the ropes. They beat UCF. They pretty handedly. They destroyed Kentucky. So they had a couple of bye weeks. Graham Mertz gets hurt. DJ Lagway is in there. Looks amazing. The deep ball is probably the best deep ball we've had in years. And Jaden Baugh, running back, looks great. This Florida team looks way different. The defense is night and day different. Tackling, making plays behind the line of scrimmage, tackles for loss or sacks, getting turnovers. I mean, turnovers were not a thing last year. And now it's become a regular thing where they're forcing mistakes by teams and getting interceptions. And, I don't know what to say. I'm not going to give my opinion first. I want to hear yours first. But I am liking the trend of this team. I mean, we both called for Billy Napier to be fired. And ever since that point, the team has kind of trended in the right direction. When they started 1-2 with losses to Miami and Texas A&M, it looked like the season was completely over. But now it doesn't. And I'm not defending Billy Napier. Obviously, I just said I called for his firing. But at the same time, I like this team. I like the talent everywhere on this team. I like DK. I like Badger. I like Mizell. I like Trey Wilson. I like Arliss Borningham. Hansen looks great. Jaden Baugh. DJ Lagway. The offensive line is gelling. Crenshaw Dixon has finally entrenched himself at right tackle. You know, I don't know what to tell you folks, but I know that Billy Napier is a detriment to how high this team can play, but the floor because of that has been elevated because the talent is so much better than the last 3 years. And so now you see a team that is completely turned around from that first 1 and 2 start to now where they're 4-3 since then. And I don't know. I mean, obviously Georgia is a very solid team. Georgia has talent out the ass in every position. Defensively, they're always one of the better defenses in the country, no matter what year it is. And Carson Beck is, you know, potentially a top pick in the NFL draft coming up. And you know, Trevor Etienne is amazing. I'm not going to deny it. He was great for Florida the last 2 years, and he's done quite well for Georgia so far. And they have other stud running backs as well. I don't know receiver-wise what Georgia has. I know Delpit, the tight end for them, is quite good, but he hasn't put up a ton of yards. But for just for Florida in general, I think they're at a way different place than they were a month ago. Just a month ago, literally start of September until now is like night and day difference. And I think every Florida fan can realize that. I think the vibe, you know, with Florida fans is different. I think, you know, they were not very confident coming into that Tennessee game. And it feels like Florida fans now have like kind of, I don't know, like jumped to realize how much better this team actually is and where they can go. But Ian, I want to hear your thoughts on this prediction, and then I'll give my prediction.
So you're definitely right. The team and the trajectory, well, I wouldn't say trajectory, but the team has looked way better than we expected than what they were looking at the beginning of the year. And I think part of that is that the chemistry is definitely a lot better than it was at the start. They're better with the signals, better, you know, knowing each other's rhythm. Getting in the rhythm game is very important. It is very good that Lagway will be starting in this one because he does offer the best possible chance. Like we said, Lagway gives you the best chance to win games. And for a team like Georgia, this is by far the toughest team. Florida's going to, well, up until they play Texas next week, which, I mean, I don't know why God hates Florida right now. But
Jeez.
For a game like this, it's going to be one of those things. I remember I said this, I made this comment like 2 years ago when Anthony Richardson got his first start. I said, for them to win this game, it's going to take a great performance and more out of Richardson, and it's going to be the same thing out of Lagway. It is good for the defense of Florida that they played a team like UCF that is very run heavy and had the best rushing offense at that time. And they were able to stop them dead in their tracks. And especially with a team like Kentucky. The difference is now is that Georgia has a passing game to complement what was expected of the run game. Right. So that is something where the secondary, which has been showing improvements, is really going to be tested now. Because Beck is definitely the best quarterback they've seen in a while. And they're going to be tested with these, you know, wide receivers who are like, no pun intended, it being Georgia, but where speed is kind of the name of the game for them on the wide receiver position. It's like I said, it's going to take a lot of over the head performances for Florida to really have a chance in this one. I have said it all year, but man, does it always creep up when they play Georgia or Tennessee or Florida State. And I've noticed that whenever it's a big game or a rivalry game, that is where Napier shows his colors. Last year, man, were those pitfalls evident where they went for on fourth down. And like they scored on the first drive, and then after that, dead in the water. And it just mistake after mistake after mistake on the coaching side. And that's a narrative. If it's going to change, it's now or never. Because as much as they have looked good, I still don't think the seat has cooled off for him. Because while, yes, you have beaten UCF and Kentucky, you also lost a really bad one and a very winnable game against Tennessee in between those two.
Yeah.
And now you got to play Georgia. It'll take Florida playing over their head. And if Georgia, man, even when they looked bad against Bama and Texas, they still beat Texas by 15, and they came back against Bama.
Yeah.
So even when Georgia is bad, they're still averaging 30 points a game.
Yeah.
For me, I don't see Florida keeping up with that or stopping them as much. It's going to take a couple winning the turnover battle, which Florida has not done in 4 years against Georgia, to really make this a game they can win. And I don't see it. I think Florida, I mean, you go back since they won in 2020, Florida hasn't made it a one-score game since that 2020 win. I'm not going to say it's going to be a one-score game, but I think they're going to be in the fight better than they were last year or the year before. But I just don't see, with a team like Georgia, them being able to knock them off. I hope to God I'm wrong. And if that does happen, what I said about bringing a sign to the Texas game the week after about firing Billy Napier, I will completely resend that and say, like, thank you, Napier. You can go back to this. If Florida beats Georgia, I will bring a sign to the Texas-Florida game that instead of saying fire Napier, I will say thank you, Napier. Book it.
I'm gonna save this. I'm making a note of it right now.
Absolutely, please do, because that's how bad I want. I want it so bad, but I'm very realistic, and I'm gonna say Bulldogs win in Jacksonville. I will go with a 35-24 win where they just wear out Florida. One other thing I want to note about this rivalry: 2 years from now, they play in Tampa, and I am so excited for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go to that for sure.
Oh, wait, 4 years from now. Sorry, got my.
Is it 7 or 8?
7
is the
7 is Atlanta, and 2028 is
yeah. Oh,
Tampa.
yeah, I'm definitely coming to that.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so, and I agree with a lot of what you said, and I think most Florida fans would agree with that as well, because that is a honest take on how we feel about the team and the honest take about what we feel about Georgia. I feel like DJ Lagway is probably the best quarterback we've had since probably Trask. And that's with a top 4 pick in the NFL draft. And is nothing against Anthony. I love Anthony. He's not as polished of a passer as DJ is. I think DJ is probably one of the most polished passers. Tongue twister. Polished passers we've ever had. And he's only a freshman. He's only played 5 games or whatever it is, and he started only 2 so far. And I think that honestly is where there's a huge difference from when Anthony started that game against Georgia, where DJ got a chance to get into a bunch of games and start 2 of them. So now there's not as much like nervousness. You know, in that game that AR started against Georgia, he completely imploded at the end of the first half. And like, it was like 2 or 3 scores in the span of like a minute or whatever it was. And that changed that game completely. I think that DJ can put up points against this team. I feel like the long ball that DJ possesses can keep them honest. So they'll have to play deeper in their safety sets. And that if that is the case, then they can take advantage because they're not going to be loading up the box. That if they have the RPO going with Jaden Baugh, with Jackson, and if Tyron Webb is back, that they'll be able to run the ball effectively, and DJ will be able to, RPO and hold it or not, and also keep them honest there. And if that is the case as well, if they're playing deeper back, safety wise, then there is a chance that Florida can get the intermediate stuff going. DJ has not shown a proficiency of that yet, which is a weakness in his game. Most of his completions against Kentucky, almost all of them were the long ball. So we'll have to see more of that develop. And it's a tough task going up against this Georgia defense to expect that. Georgia's offense, like you said, it should be able to put up points. I expect them to put up at least 30, but I expect Florida's offense to be effective. I think why Georgia did so well against Texas was because Quinn Ewers is still coming back from an injury a little bit, and I think that was why that Texas struggled so much in that first half. I think if Quinn was healthy in that game, I think Texas puts up a bigger fight, and they may even have won that game if Quinn was like 100%. I expect DJ to have a great game. I expect Jaden Baugh to have a great game. I expect Badger to have a really good game. I expect defensively, Shamar James and Pup. I believe Pup is going to have a huge game. And I think if they can get to Beck and force a couple of turnovers, that might be the difference in the game. And I think that's the other thing, that Florida has not been fumbling the ball as much. And DJ has only been responsible for about one interception a game. If he can limit it to one or no interceptions, I believe Florida has a really good shot. But I feel like Georgia's going to win the game. And I'm going to say Georgia wins like probably 34 to like 27. And maybe even Florida has the ball late and just can't score. And that's how they lose. So, yeah, I'm going to say Georgia has the ball last and runs out the clock. That's what I'm going to say. So 34-27, Georgia. Okay, moving on to Iowa State, Texas Tech. I don't know a ton about this Texas Tech team. One of the guys I follow on X, Red Raider Gator, he's a good follow, very funny guy. He's both a Texas Tech alum and Florida alum, and he's like the most I see about Texas Tech is through him. I believe they're 5-2 at this point, a solid team, and so this game is in Lubbock. So Texas Tech, I don't know. I mean, Iowa State has done well so far. They struggled in that UCF game, and they barely won that game. Do they get bit here? This is an easy game for them to lose. Ian, what do you feel? I'm going to give my prediction after you because I feel like you probably know Texas Tech more than I do.
So Tech actually in the Big 12 has the best offense in the Big 12. And it's by a pretty good margin. They're averaging over 450 yards a game. And I think they're averaging 38 points a game, which is good news. The problem is that their defense is the second worst in the Big 12. And they have been giving up over 460 yards a game and 36 points a game. And a lot of their losses have come from shootouts. They lost a 1-point game to TCU last week. They got blown out in a shootout against Baylor. And their other loss was in at Washington State. They lost, I think it was like 37-14, 16. So the defense has really struggled. Now on the other side of that, Iowa State, I've always said they're a Big 10 team disguised in the Big 12. And their defense has been just as good, second best in the Big 12. And the offense is, is still averaging about 30 points a game. I feel like in this one, if Tech can get it into a shootout mode, Iowa State cannot keep up like that. But with how bad Tech's defense is and how much Iowa State, they have been, getting able to put 30, 40-point games up there. I think with that, it's definitely a game that's upset watch, but I feel like with Iowa State, they can get enough points on the board to keep up with Tech and take advantage of that defense. So I'm going to go with the Cyclones here. I'm going to go with a 35-31 win for Iowa State.
Yeah, I think I agree because I didn't know too much about Texas Tech, but I'm glad you brought it up, and I should have done a little bit more research. Like I said, I've been a little sick, so I didn't have as good of prep today. But no, this Iowa State team with Rocco Becht, is solid enough that I feel like they should win this game. Their schedule going forward after this is, let me see. After this, they have Kansas next week, and then they have after that and Kansas only has 2 wins as of right now, and then they have Cincinnati, Utah, and Kansas State. So it's a tough schedule. Like, I mean, Cincinnati, they should beat. It's a home game. Wait, no. Am I wrong again? Okay, so this game is not in Lubbock. It's in I'm completely messing up. I do apologize. So this game is a home game for Iowa State. So I feel like Iowa State should win this game. And going forward, their schedule, it sets them up well to get into the Big 12 championship game. But even if they get a loss, they still have a really good shot at getting into the playoffs. So it's not the end of the world. But yeah, Texas Tech, not good defensively, is not a good thing to go forth in this game because Iowa State can score points. And I feel like Iowa State will. I'm going to go with Iowa State. I'm going to say Iowa State wins like 31-27. Okay, next game we've got is Indiana, Michigan State. As of right now, I don't think Rourke is going to play. So it's going to be the backup again for Indiana. I don't feel like Michigan State poses that big of a challenge, considering that Indiana last week really, took it to Washington. I don't know. This game could go either way because this game is you know what I'm confused? Because what's messing me up is I follow the same thing on the NCAA website, and for whatever reason, when I did the scheduling stuff, it didn't come through correct or whatever. Or maybe I just wrote it on there wrong. But either way, that's why I've been messing up with who the home games are with these. Let me see. Peter Thamel says optimism that he will play. Okay, so maybe, and there was surgery, so maybe they fixed whatever they needed in his finger or his thumb to be able to play. If he plays, I feel like Indiana will smoke them, and I feel like they would smoke them like 45-17. If he doesn't play, I feel like it'd be closer and it'd be like similar score to last week, probably like a 31-14 game. But I'm going to say he plays, and I'm going to say 45-17. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, and I think with this one, even if he doesn't play, Indiana's offense is just a machine right now where I think they'll be okay. Maybe not score as much points, but Michigan State against Division I teams this year, they did score 40 against Prairie View, but the most they've scored is 27 against Maryland in week 2. They only were held to 17 against Michigan, held to 20 against Iowa. I don't see them getting more points than what Indiana has had, which is, still has not scored less than 30 points all year. So I think Indiana will just run away with it. I'm going to go with a 40-17 win for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, definitely. And, this Indiana team, the rest of their season, Ohio State and I think there's one other game. But yeah, so they have some big games left, and even if they lose that Ohio State game, more than likely will probably get in to the playoff at an 11-1. Okay, so I just got an update about Jason Marshall from Jack Meyer, who's a reporter. He said still nothing from Napier in the SEC teleconference this morning. There should at least be some clarity as to the status when the availability report is released later tonight. So we'll know about Jason Marshall tonight. So that's the update directly from him. Okay, next game we have is Nebraska UCLA. Now UCLA was left for dead. Things were looking terrible. The offense wasn't scoring more than 17. And then they had this explosion against Rutgers, and they scored like 30 plus. And Garbers looked great. I mean, everyone left Garbers for dead. Like the fan base was ready to move on, try something different. But he showed out, and he showed he's capable. And I think he can be capable in this game. I think there's more confidence coming in this game than 2 weeks ago. Probably 2 weeks ago before that Rutgers game, there was probably no confidence in this game. But considering that Nebraska now is 3 losses on their belt and UCLA just beat Rutgers in their last game, I feel like UCLA is got an opportunity here. The game is in LA. Yes, I know this one for sure.
It's in Lincoln.
Oh my God, dude. I'm sorry, but I don't like I'm telling you, man, I don't know what it is because maybe I don't know, man. I'm like way off here. Okay, because I saw it's the flip-flop as well, because every time
I just assume that whatever it tells you, just think of the opposite.
Yeah, at this point. No, yeah. But it's like now with these LA teams for these Big Ten matchups, it's like a Big Ten team will play UCLA, and then following week they'll play USC, and they won't play in LA both those games. They'll play one of them in LA and then one at home. And so it's like it flip-flops with every one of these teams. So it's like if you played USC the one week, the next week you're going to play UCLA. Seems like every team is scheduled like that. So next week USC hosts Nebraska, and I should have known that because I have the Nebraska game on my calendar as one to go to. But no, so on the road. But I feel like UCLA has a shot here. Nebraska's kind of wounded, struggled against Indiana, played better against Ohio State, but it was a tough loss. And now UCLA has a chance to really make something of their season. If they can get this win here and then, try to be competitive in the rest of the games, the rest of the year, which they have Iowa, which they could easily beat Iowa. Washington would be tough, but they should beat Fresno State. And then at this point, it's kind of a toss-up with this USC team. I like UCLA talent-wise, but UCLA could contend. It's a rivalry game. You never know. So if they get 3 games and they win, if they win 3 of them, 3 or 4 at the end here, that turns the season around. Maybe they get a bowl game, and that would be huge considering they started the season 1-5. I don't see it, though. I think Nebraska is going to get this one. Sorry, Richard. I'm going to say Nebraska wins because I like Raiola a lot, and their defense is stout, and I feel like Raiola can put up enough points. Even though I do like UCLA's defense, I still feel like Nebraska is just a better team right now than UCLA. I'm going to say Nebraska wins like 31 to like 24. What do you got, Ian?
I think it's also important to note that one of the reasons UCLA won that game was because of the offense, but you got to remember that Rutgers defense is the second worst in the Big Ten, and Nebraska is in the upper, not like top 5, but they're still very good defensively unless they're playing Indiana. But with this game, it's one of those things again where it's like UCLA, yes, they did finally, break the mold. They scored more than 20 points. But I don't feel like they would have enough in this one against a team like Nebraska. And it's in Lincoln. I don't see them winning in that kind of environment. I I don't think it'll be maybe as bad, but I got Nebraska winning. I'll go with a 31-17 win for the Huskers.
Okay, moving on to Clemson, Louisville. This game is in Clemson. I know for sure because I'm looking at it right now. So
no, it's a neutral site. I'm messing with you.
Damn it. Got me all messed up. Clemson should easily win this game. I have no doubt in my mind because Clemson offense is rolling right now. They're putting up a ton of points every week. Their defense, it's funny because like in some of these games, the defense has done well, but then it's like they're up so big that like they put in backups so that the opposing teams make it look closer than it actually is. And so their like numbers don't look great. But I feel like their defense will probably play the whole game here. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I think Clemson still wins by 17. I'm going to go with like a 45 to like 30 game. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, I agree. I think Clemson will handle business here. Louisville definitely has a lot of weapons, but I don't see that they can really outshoot Clemson in this one. And you hit the nail on the head. Clemson defensively is better than it looks. And for Louisville, they still been giving up against offenses like this, like Clemson, that are very good at precision passing. They've given up well over 30 points a game usually. And I think Clemson will do that again. I'm going to go with a 38-20 win for the Tigers.
Okay, real quick on one. I didn't have it listed in our games, but what are your thoughts on Kentucky, Tennessee?
So with that one, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was one in my head that it's kind of it's a bit of a trap game for Tennessee because Kentucky is wounded, but it could very well be kind of a call sign that we're kind of nearing the end of the Mark Stoops era of Kentucky because he took a really bad loss to a bad Auburn team and he's lost 3 in a row and now he's got to go to Neyland Stadium. Man, you're going to ask a Kentucky team that against Tennessee that just got off a win against Bama. The only hope for Kentucky is that Tennessee's off a bye week and maybe this is a letdown game. But, man, I don't think with Tennessee right now, especially with how well the offense is and how well the defense can come in when the offense is not working well. If Kentucky wants to play a very like in the mud type of game, Tennessee's defense can actually square up like that. But I don't see Kentucky getting more than like 17 points in this game. So I'm going to go the Vols winning like 30-14, and we're going to be maybe hearing some stuff out of Lexington about some new hires.
Yeah, it's possible. Okay, this game seems to be like it's going to be more competitive. Texas A&M, South Carolina. I would say that South Carolina and Texas A&M is on upset alert because South Carolina's played a lot of teams pretty well. But I'm not going to say it just because I feel like this Texas A&M team is really good. Like defensively, they look really good. I know it's in Columbia, but Columbia, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the environment's going to be hyped. This is a 7:30 kick. The Gamecocks have played really well all year outside of that Ole Miss game. They smoked Kentucky. They played really well against LSU, probably should have won. They played really great against Alabama. Were this close to winning. I don't know. I mean, this team is dangerous. Like, if you do not take this game seriously, Texas A&M, you're going to lose. And there's a real good shot that they could. I'm not going to call it because I don't feel like – I don't know. I like Reed running the offense with Texas A&M. I feel like he is more potent than what Weigman was doing. And looks like Weigman is going to transfer. And so, I like Reed here running the offense and doing things. And but I like Sellers as well. Sellers, the kid is a stud, and he's a huge kid that is athletic and has a live arm. and he's only like, I believe he's only a freshman. And so like, you'll see a lot from this kid going forward, but I don't know. This is a toss up. I feel like Texas A&M should win this game, but clearly South Carolina is going to put a scare into him. This might be the best game of the day. I'm saying this is going to be the closest game, like maybe like a field goal wins it late. And I'm going to say Texas A&M wins like 28-27. What do you got, Ian?
I think is another thing too is that South Carolina has the most under the radar top 25 defense in the country. They've only given up 30 points once, and that was against LSU in that loss. The one counteract, though, is that while Sellers is definitely good, the offense and the rushing attack is the main priority, but the passing game has really not been there. There isn't a lot of medium to deep routes. If there is, it's bubble screens or drag routes. There's not a lot of explosive plays coming through the passing game. And that is something that is going to be needed against Texas A&M. Now, I definitely believe this is an upset watch. And if there was a game I would pick for an upset, this would be the one because it's in Columbia. But I feel like if Reed is starting, South Carolina's defense is going to have a bit of a struggle to get enough stops compared to Texas A&M. I feel like A&M will win this one in a very close one, and I think it might be a low-scoring affair, but I think A&M wins out. I'm going to go with a 27 to let's go 24-20 win for the Aggies.
Okay, last two. USC, Washington. This is probably two evenly matched teams, especially record-wise, 4-4, both of them. Rodgers is a very solid quarterback for Washington, and I like Miller Moss a ton. Defensively, Washington is up there rankings-wise in a lot of their rankings. But, Washington has lost to Iowa very badly, lost to Rutgers, did lose to Washington State, which was, as of now, doesn't look bad because Washington State is 7-1. And they lost to Indiana. And they were competitive in that game against Indiana. And they did beat Michigan. And they have one of the better pass defenses in the country. I don't know. I like this USC offense a lot. It is probably the most important part of USC's team composite. And I feel like that is their strength, that they can put up points against anybody. And I feel like they kind of shot themselves in the foot in a couple of those losses. And they didn't do that against Rutgers. And I feel like if they can keep going with that momentum, building off that, the rest of the year, to win out the rest of the year looks obtainable. They have tough games against Notre Dame and rivalry game against UCLA. But this USC team has a lot to play for. Nebraska in 2 weeks. So this is it. These are the last 4 weeks. I feel like USC should win this game. I know it's in Seattle, and I know it's a tough place to play. It's been tough for them throughout the years for USC to try to win there. So I feel like Washington will put a scare in them, but I think USC gets the win. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to say probably 31-28 game. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, with this game, you hit the nail on the head again. It's USC's kind of been their own worst enemy in their losses. They've gotten their own ways, and it was either coaching, play calling, or just decision making from Miller Moss. It was not where it needed to be. They cleaned it up a lot against Rutgers, and I get it's Rutgers, and that is kind of a tune-up game, but that was a much-needed win, and to show, yes, they are capable of doing that. Washington, the offense has been very kind of hit and miss. Will Rogers is a great quarterback, but he definitely doesn't have as much help as maybe he did when he was at Mississippi State. And the one game that for Washington, that's really just like, and even looking at this game, we know how good USC's offense is when it is clicking, when they're getting out of their own way and they're, Miller Moss is on point. It's all near unstoppable. And you gave up, as Washington, in about 3 weeks ago, 40 points to Iowa.
Yeah.
That's not something I can easily forget.
Right.
So I think for that, I don't think it's going to be like that, but I don't see Washington able to like keep up with USC. And while USC has definitely defensively has looked better, and they're not losing shootouts anymore. And now it sounds kind of mean to say, but now they're just losing by getting in their own way instead of just awful defense. So really pick your poison on that one. But if USC, like you said, gets out of their own way and is not their own worst enemy, I think they'll have control of this game. And I think they'll win handedly. I'm going to go with a 34-17 win for the Trojans.
Nice. Okay, last game, and then we'll call it a show. SMU Pitt. It's in Dallas. It's a late kick, 8 Eastern kick. It's a night game. There's going to be a lot of hype. I don't know how many fans are going to be there because SMU, for whatever reason, can't seem to pack their stadium that well. But it is an undefeated Pitt team and with a shot at the ACC championship on the line. So I would think that the fans would be there. SMU has Boston College, Virginia, and Cal after this. So this legitimately is the last team that they're going to play that has an opportunity of stopping them getting to the ACC championship game. So I think if SMU wins this, I think they're likely in. I know they could obviously lose to any of those 3 teams at the end of the year, but I feel like they're better than those 3. And most of those games are at home outside the Virginia game. So they have 3 home games here to really ride out the season. And I feel like SMU with Jennings can do that. I like Jennings a lot. I think he is very dynamic in all phases of being a quarterback. And, I feel like this Pitt team, I don't know. I'm not sold on them. Offensively, I like their running back. He's a stud. But their quarterback, I'm not really completely sold on. I think they got very fortunate in that Syracuse game that McCord imploded. If he doesn't implode, I think that game might have been close, but he imploded to one of the worst implosions I've ever seen a quarterback. So I feel like SMU should be favored in this game. I don't know if they are Vegas wise, but I don't really care. I feel like SMU as a home team with a better quarterback situation, better offense, and they're an opportunistic defense as well. So I feel like they have a shot here. I don't love Pitt. I feel like SMU wins probably like, let's say 35 to like 28. What do you got, Ian?
So in this one, both coaches have said that the starting quarterbacks are in kind of a wait and see approach. So we're going to see who really is going to be starting for each, if, Jennings will be starting and or Holstein. If it does come down to backups, I think SMU's got the advantage there with Preston Stone. But let's just say best case scenario, both teams start. I still see it as with SMU, their passing game is well over, they're averaging over 300 yards a game. And that is something that has been a real Achilles heel for Pitt. They do not have that good of a passing defense and really defense in general. I mean, I think they're in the 50, 60 range in the NCAA. For Pitt to win this, they're going to need to limit turnovers because, like you said, SMU takes advantage of those turnovers, and they are one of the best at points off turnovers. I think, though, SMU gets enough, maybe forces a turnover or 2 and wins that battle. If they win that battle, they'll win this game, and I think they can do that. I'm going to go the Mustangs winning this one, and I think they'll stay undefeated in conference play. I'm going to go with a let's go 30-23 win for SMU.
Yeah, I'm looking at the injury update. I didn't realize that, and I apologize. I didn't realize it, but he got hit during the Duke game when he threw an interception in the fourth quarter, and then he came back out and led them to the win. So I know that play that they won it on, they got the touchdown on was a running play. So, and it was a handoff to the running back. So it's not like he did a ton there, but still capable. Who knows? I'm not seeing exactly what the injury is. A low hit, so it's might be with his legs. So he might be limited running wise. So it might honestly be best to play Preston Stone if he is limited, because Jennings, a big part of his game is his ability to run the ball and to make the defenses honest. So we'll see. But I like your prediction as well, and I feel like that's probably going to be pretty sound. Okay, that is the show, everyone. Happy Halloween. Enjoy these games. Florida, Georgia this weekend. I'm excited, regardless if they win or not. I love this game. I have loved this game for like 30 years now, and it's probably one of my favorite rivalry games, and probably is. It used to be Florida State, but I love this game even more because I lived in Jacksonville for 3 years, and I know how much the rivalry means. So happy Halloween, everyone, and take care.